Hi, everybody. Welcome to Arrivals Belonging, an amazing project taken on by Black Theatre Workshop. And today we're going to be talking to several. Oh, by the way, my name is Warona Setshwaelo. I've been working with the program and I work at BTW as well. Today we're going to be talking with several people that were involved with the program in different ways. We're going to talk about the Arrivals project and touch a little bit on the belongings. So first off, I would like to introduce to you the brain person of all of this, Diane Roberts. If you could pop up on your screen. Oh, there she is. Hello, Diane. How are you this
Hi,
morning?
Warona. I'm well. Thank you very much. Very, very
Good.
happy to be here. And
It's so nice to have you here and here on the screen in the live. So let's just dive right into it. Let me just introduce you a little bit to Diane. Diane is an amazing artist. She has been a performer, a director, producer. Diane has been an artistic director. She's worked all over the country, but is now back in Montreal. Lucky us. We're lucky to have her back. Thank you so much. She's been guest artist in universities. Diane has touched a lot of lives artistically, and she's been working on the Arrivals project for quite a while now. So, Diane, why don't you just start us off by telling us when and why you started this?
oh, well, it started actually in 2003 when I was in Montreal. I was doing a residency at Concordia, and I wanted to create an exercise that could speak to the diverse student body that was coming into my class. And they were diverse in many ways. They were diverse in the sense that everybody had to take the class. So you had designers, theater studies people, technicians, all taking the class. And so I wanted to create an exercise that would be a sort of equal playing ground for all the different interests in theater, and also that would speak to the different cultural, I guess, the culturally diverse student body that was coming into the class. And so, and it was in a way to sort of heal the experience I had in theater school, which really was a deracinating process for me. Like I just had to put my culture aside and take on the life of white characters, and anyway. So this exercise was created. This idea I had was that people would embody an ancestor 2 or 3 generations away, somebody they didn't know, and that they would have an opportunity to do the research using Uta Hagen's 9 steps for character development to sort of embody a moment, a compelling moment in their ancestor's life, not by telling the story, but by creating an environment where the story could be told just by saying 3 words and having 3 objects in the space. It was an exercise that was based on presence. We were teaching, at this point, I was teaching them how to tell a story just using your bodies. But what happened in that workshop, in that I think it was 3 sessions that we ended up expanding to 5 or 6. What happened was that they were so deeply impacted by the exercise of just even choosing their ancestor, doing the research, being in touch with a historic moment. It felt like the ancestor they chose was the ancestor they needed. So I just sort of woke up to the power of the work. And started researching it. So the next group that I researched with was a PhD and MFA group of artists working at York University. And my first partner in the work was Heather Hermont, who then became a co-facilitator, the first co-facilitator of the process. And when I went to Urban Inc., I did the Arrivals Cross Canada Workshop Series, and Montreal and you and Julie were the first people to actually do the official Arrivals Legacy Workshop. So it's
Oh,
been
wow.
18 years, yeah.
Wow, what an amazing origin story. And how have you, I mean, you've spoken a little bit about the evolution towards the beginning, but it's been a while now since it first started, even
Yeah.
since you started rolling it out outside of the university class where it sort of sprung up. How has it evolved over the years now? What have you seen?
Yeah, I mean it's incredible. I still learn so much. Every workshop is so different, and I learn every single time. And now, as you know, I'm doing my PhD to study the work, to study the deeper origins of the work that were birthed in me. My question being, why and how has this work arrived? And why has it chosen me? That's what I'd like to really, truly understand. And what are some of the processes that are Indigenous and African-based processes that sort of feed into this work in the way that it's arrived in me? But yeah, it has developed in really, really interesting ways. I mean, I've applied the work in different environments. So I've done it as a sort of community development workshop, working with youth and elders in different Indigenous and racialized communities to talk about belonging, to talk about to touch on issues of cultural reclamation. And then I've also done it with artists, interdisciplinary artists, working on seeding new projects. I've done residencies in people's homes. For example, I worked with Shante Grant and Liliana Parman. We went to Jamaica to do a sort of in situ residency in her home community or her ancestral community, and then back to Preston in just outside of Halifax. So there have been many different ways of seeing the work realized and deepening the sort of application and the research that comes in the work. It's, for me, it's really about creative research, and it's also has definite healing properties in
Oh,
that it
wow.
sort of reestablishes or
Yeah.
reconnects people to their
And I think
sources.
something you brought up just now is like super important to mention the fact that this is not a program or it's not a workshop just for artists.
Mhm.
It goes way outside of that. You spoke a little bit about some of the work you've done outside of working with artists, but I think it's really important for people to understand, obviously this is like sort of under the umbrella of Black Theatre Workshop right now, and you're an artist and I'm an artist. So
Mhm.
there's this sort of artist thing to it. But there were people that were part of the program who are not artists. You've just mentioned a whole bunch of places that you've done this. Maybe can you is there any difference? Like, what do you change the program in any way, or do you do it at the exact same way? And can you just speak a little bit about that, especially doing it with people who are not necessarily artists?
Yeah, I think there's just different ways of engaging people. I work with a, a group of co-facilitators. So I think right now, all totaled, there are about 15 or 16 co-facilitators that I work with, and different skills. The different skills that the co-facilitators bring to the process really impact the projects that I'm working on. For example, I've worked a lot with young people when I was working at Urban Inc., because the company was founded as an Indigenous theater company, we still had strong ties into the Indigenous communities within the greater BC regions. So we would go into these communities and work with youth and elders, and I would put together a team that specialized in working with youth, especially because that's not my strong point. I mean, I love to design the programs, but I always bring in the people who really have the skills of building with youth, and youth, like young people, especially children. Like, it was really surprising to me. We had a workshop that we did on Galliano Island where there was an 11-year-old and I
Wow.
think a 13-year-old who was in the workshop. And they were so deep into the work. I mean, you find different ways to engage them, because when you're working with artists, there's a lot of, you can rely on the artist's ability to sit in the silences and and wait for the inspiration to come, especially, and
Right.
to feedback and reflection process. But with young people, you have to keep them engaged and use a lot more metaphors and tools. So I would bring in sticks and clay for them to engage them in different ways and different elements with the environment that they could use. So it just sort of, it always expands, the group of people that are in the workshop always expands the scope and the depth and the application of the workshop. I always talk about that there's a template that has been developed, a tried and true template that has been developed over the years, working with different communities and artists. But every workshop demands something else. So there's always this sense of, I don't know what's going to happen in this workshop. So we all step into, including me as lead facilitator, we step into this abyss, this kind of, what do we do now? What's the next step? Together we have to sort of allow the process to unravel itself in us, as I call each grouping a village within the village, that we all have to take agency and ownership over what the next steps are. And I love that. It's terrifying as all get out, because you step in and you think, this is the day it's going to all fall apart and I'm going to be revealed this problem. But it always works itself out.
It always works out. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
awesome. What has doing this kind of work taught you about yourself, your process, your practice? Yeah, what has it taught you or given you? What have you learned?
Well, it feels like a deep calling now for me. I mean, I am now in a place where I'm tracking back and I'm reflecting on everything that brought me here. That's part of the PhD process, but also, I'm at a certain point in my career where I'm in this baby elderhood or whatever, as a colleague who was my age at this a few years back used to call herself. Um, so yeah, there's this kind of reflection of what has led me here, and all the questions I was asking. Even when I auditioned for theater school, they said, so what would you do after you graduate? What would your dream be? And I said, well, to have an international theater company that worked on projects that were intercultural. And even then, I didn't, I wasn't as learned as I am now, but there was something in the birthing of that vision of being able to work with people. And so what has it offered me? I think my dramaturgical process has deepened a lot, where I'm really interested in the mysteries in a process. So I talk about these 4 building blocks to creation: body, mind, voice, breath, and spirit. And I think about how those 4 elements that we use for performance creation, at least, can be examined from different perspectives. So I'm starting to develop values around how I create, and how I and what kinds of questions I ask artists in the dramaturgical process and directorial process. So I do feel like it's really it's really given me the sort of grounding or bones of yeah. I'm not sure how
I
to.
think grounding is a really good word. You know, I also did the arrivals process about a decade ago, and I will say within my own practice, grounding is a huge part of what the project, the workshops have done for me,
Mhm.
specifically. Okay, well, I'm just going to ask you one last question because we do want to talk also to the facilitators and some of the participants. Um, but my last question is kind of a little bit of a two-parter. First, what I want to know is where you see, and you've touched on it a little bit, but where do you see this going in the future? What do you see, you know, after your PhD? Where do you think the Arrivals project is going to go? But before you sort of go into that, maybe you can touch a little bit on what it's been like doing this under our pandemic situation, because you've carried on and you've done, I think, two different versions of this now or something during the pandemic. So if you could touch on that a little bit and then tell us a bit about the future, that would be amazing.
Hmm. Yeah, well, this digital version that we did with the Arrivals Belonging Project was the second version of that. The first version was with Benita Bailey and an ensemble that she has put together called Diaspora Kids. So that was the first experiment of this digital process. I think, like everybody, like most artists, I went into I was a bit frozen, not knowing where to go. And I didn't want to compromise the process by trying to squeeze it in to a digital space. But then, as when Benita approached me to do this, and Julie Tamika Manning and I started working together on developing what this workshop could look like, we realized that some of the exercises could live in digital space. And so we took it on as an experiment to see how far we could push it. And we created a new unit, which was the research part of the researching of one's ancestor part of the workshop. In the past, what has happened is people research their ancestors on their own, and we may have a couple of email exchanges, and then they come into the workshop and we start the physical process together, with the research sort of having been behind them. But in this workshop, we really delve into how to research our ancestral subject, how to choose, how to do that research from an embodied place. So I bring in some of the exercises from the workshop. So I think, this new version of the workshop will exist as a standalone, that could be offered in the future. What it gives opportunity for is for national and international collaboration. So Lopa, for example, Lopa Surkar, who you'll speak to shortly, was co-facilitating from Leiden in the Netherlands. And Liliana was in Halifax. And, so that just opened up so many possibilities of being able to work with not just local co-facilitators, but national and international. And also the group, we had a participant who came in from, where was she?
Tunisia, I believe.
Tunisia, that's right, yeah.
Yeah,
And that was a shock because we thought she was in Montreal, and then she said,
yeah,
oh no, I'm in
no, they're
Tunisia.
in Tunisia.
Yeah. So there's real opportunity now, I think, for expanding the scope of the process. And like I said, I'm doing my PhD, so I'm really deeply investigating the roots that will have affected this process. And part of that research will take me into my home, my ancestral home, which is St. Vincent, working with the Garifuna peoples, who were the Black Caribs that were exiled back in the 18th
Yeah.
century. So I'll be doing a sort of, I'll be putting myself through the process in a way, and unraveling my own origin story at the same time as the arrival's origin story. So that's really exciting to me. And then
that is exciting.
the birthing of the Arrivals Legacy Project Institute. I just think, yeah, it's just a vision that Heather and some of the other co-facilitators and I have had for many years, is to have a training and research creation center where we as racialized artists, Indigenous artists, and settler artists as well could be in dialogue in this decolonized process and decolonizing process. So
That's fantastic. Diane, thank you so much for chatting with us. I'll catch up with you at the end of all of this, but I'm about to go and talk to some of the participants. Thank you for all that information and, of course, your lovely energy this morning. I'll see you in a little bit. That was Diane Roberts. She started this process. Now we're going to talk to several of the people that actually were participants in the Arrivals project, this past one that just happened. They are people that signed up to be part of it, and they should be entering the room at any moment. Here we go. Hey, there we are. Hi, Thalia. Hi, Christine.
Hi,
Hi,
Warona.
Jason.
Hi.
Okay, so first off, I'm just going to dive right in. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, just give us your name, and tell us why it is you decided to join the Arrivals Project. So let me start with you, Thalia.
So my name is Thalia Urbani. I am finishing my last year of high school. I am an aspiring singer, writer, songwriter, and composer. The reason why I wanted to do this was because with everything that was happening around the world, I was feeling very helpless. And, you know, something that was very important to me was learning what I could control, learning what I couldn't control, which is something I'm still working with. And when this opportunity came to me, you know, I realized that it was a way for me to learn how to be grounded and more grounded in who I am. So I needed it. I needed it because it served as a catalyst for learning who I am. And I had a good feeling and intuition that it was something I needed to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Jason, how about you?
I'm a musician. I'm a poet, community worker, and kind of like Talia, I knew that it was time to do it, to take a deeper look at my family and kind of put the pieces together. Right now, it's a time of such loss, and I knew that in certain ways I need to take advantage of this opportunity because time is not always as infinite as we think it is.
That's a good point. Thank you, Jason. Christine, over to you.
Hi, I'm a playwright, actor, theater administrator, and I've been wanting to do this workshop for a really long time. And for me, obviously with COVID, everything, you know, everybody's stuck at home, so it was a really good time to do it. But also I think that I was probably emotionally or physically ready also to do the work when maybe I might not have been before. And I really wanted to do it because of the, I think for me as a mixed race person, and also like my family, like there's the question of identity, who are we? And we talk about it a lot in our family. And so this was an opportunity to dig deeper and to really find out like what it means to have multiple cultures inside of you, and discover that maybe there's some things that are stronger inside you and you don't know why, but going through this process, you kind of realize that you have some ancestors that you're carrying with you and that are probably guiding you in life. So yeah, that's why I decided to do it.
Nice. Thank you, Christine. What are some surprises or things that struck you or just discoveries that you've made while doing this process, either about the process yourself, about your ancestor, whatever, just surprise something that has sort of stayed with you? Jason, let me start with you.
Sure. I think for me, it was about having to go and talk to my parents to get the information about their parents, because I wasn't sure who to pick in terms of my ancestors. So I went to both sides, and I'm glad I did that because I feel like they were so intertwined. Um, and I think I didn't expect the answers to come so quickly. They were so open, more than I thought they would be, and that was really reassuring for me. But also the fact that at a certain point, I ran out of questions to ask. I didn't know what else to ask. But I'm like I knew whatever they asked, they would be able to help me as much as they could with whatever they knew. But at a certain point, I was like, okay, now what do I do? I don't have any questions left, and I had to kind of pull back and say, okay, what else do I want to know? And I think the big revelation going forward is, uh, outside of this project, I can keep asking those questions and learn more and more and more and more. And that's a good
Yeah,
feeling for me.
yeah, yeah. I can totally. That makes sense. How about you, Thalia? Thalia, what has struck you, or what have you taken away?
I think I've taken away a lot of things, but I think the most important for me is, as a mixed race person too, the feeling of belonging is something that is very rare for me to feel. And connecting with my ancestor, which was an ancestor that was very grounded in who he was, it helped me learn how to feel like I belong. And it's a feeling that is very new to me and very beautiful. And I was expecting the process to be very painful, but at the end, a lot easier. But it was a mix of a lot of different things, and I didn't expect that. So I left feeling everything more profoundly, and I didn't expect that.
Okay. Thank you, Talia. Christine, same question for you.
Well, I learned about I always knew about an uncle that I had that passed away when he was little. He was like probably 4 or 5. But in starting this work, the research, I found out more about this uncle, and basically the ancestor I was working on was my grandmother that I never met. But learning about this uncle, it was really, I ended up going through like a mourning for him.
Oh, wow.
I spent a weekend like between we had 2 weeks. So the first, I'm trying to think. I think I can't remember exactly when we started, but there was a weekend in between before we
Okay,
came
yeah.
back. And so I had been doing research, talking to family and so on and so forth. And learning about this uncle, I went through a whole mourning period that weekend, like bawling my eyes out, and like it was really intense. So it was like I was living this person's passing away that I never met. So that I felt that a really strong connection in a sense to my grandmother, and kind of experiencing like her loves, her sorrows. Like even watching a video of like a Trinidadian troupe of young women at a high school doing like a Spanish Castilian. And I was also moved by it. It was like it was my memories, but it wasn't, it's so these strange connections. And then you're like, this is insane. Like, it's amazing. And then you start to believe in the work and how profound it is. And connecting with like, it's very grounding, right? Like Thalia, so you finish and you're like, wow, I learned something about who I am, where I'm from. And it becomes more concrete. It's in you. So then I feel it makes you stronger in the end, because what do people say? You can't know who you are unless you know where you come from. So.
And do you think, Christine, that you will, I know you just finished just a few weeks ago, but do you feel like this will inform your artistic process or inform your life, or has it already started to? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, it's definitely informed my life in the sense of like understanding why I gravitate towards certain things, because they were my grandmother's culture, her parents' culture. And she carried that to Trinidad. And even Trinidad to this day, there's a lot of cultural aspects that come from all the different peoples that have moved there. And I don't know if Trinidadians really if we really grasp all of that. For example, that it was a place where they spoke 3 languages at one point, English, French, Spanish. You know, so there's a lot of stuff. So my present life, it helps to understand a lot of things about who I am, why I gravitate towards the things that I do, like certain cultural aspects or interests.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing a major in Hispanic studies. I don't
Right.
know why I like Spanish so much. Well, because it's inside me and I need to connect with that.
Gotcha.
You know, like Afro Latinidad, or like that stuff. So, but in my work, I don't know how I'm gonna continue. It's really, the process was so amazing because you have facilitators working you through exercises, and I love the process. Was very deep for me, and like I was writing stuff. I was like, you know, thinking up stuff, and like now I'm sad because I'm like, how am I going to continue this process with the creative juices flowing without all the facilitators and without the support of the group? So I very much would like to continue in the process. I still have my altar for my ancestors, you know, and I'm still lighting a candle every day. And so I think the most important is probably the physical work and having the like little things that mean something to you, that tie you to your ancestor, and working with those. Like I could see how like moving forward with my process artistically, it would make it a lot richer than it was before. Like really connecting the
Right.
body, not just an intellectual
Yeah.
process of writing, but connecting to the body.
Yeah. Yeah. Jason, you spoke a bit about how, you know, it's affected you already within your family, like your own life. Do you think that this would inform your process? Has it already in terms of your art?
Um, yes, I'm not sure what's gonna happen. I think I'm really still at the beginning in terms of embodiment, in terms of understanding the ancestors. I feel like I'm still in the middle of the process. I feel like there's so much more work I need
Hmm.
to do. Um, but I do think it opens the door for my ancestors to play a bigger part in everything I do as an artist, for them to um, be there. So, for instance, just thinking about and maybe trying to invoke my grandfather in my musical practice, and thinking about how he, you know, was a musician, and you know, an amateur musician, but still it was part of what he did. And the irony of there are certain facilities that I don't have that he did have, and trying to draw and pull from those, and remember that to encourage me to say, okay, wait a minute, you know, I'm good at these things, but I'm not good at transcription. But he actually was, as someone who was probably self-trained. So to think about that and remember that those skills are within me somehow. So I hope that helps. But I feel like there's so much more I need to do to get to the bottom of the process. I feel like I'm still kind of somewhere between the shallow end and the deep end, and I know I
Right.
can go further.
Okay. Talia, same question for you.
I think this work has made me more vulnerable in all the different senses. And I think with vulnerability comes, you know, you live everything more intensely, and that's also shown through your work. So I feel like I've become more in line with my intuition, and my writing is more vivid and more descriptive in a way that aligns more with the intensity and profoundness I found through the workshop.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you guys for all your vulnerability here today. Just to wrap up, with the three of you, I'd like to ask you one last question, which is, what would you say to somebody who is considering doing the arrival process? Let's start with you, Christine. What would you say?
I would say 100% do it. You know, I would say like take good care. Do put 100% of the work in, and like in terms of the effort. Like don't go in halfway, because you're not gonna, you can get so much out of it. So go in and make sure you do the work 100%. Also, if it gets tough, it can be hard. Like I had to mourn the loss of a child, like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
it's tough. And I was then every day I'm like, oh no, what am I going to learn today? And it's going to break my heart. But, you know, like stick with it because it's really worth it, because it's it's not you, like, just the discoveries are beautiful. The connections are beautiful. And so it's do the work, but also stick to it, even though it gets tough, because it could get tough just depending on what you discover, but stick with it because it's part of who you are, and we have to deal with some tough things, but we're survivors, and so I think we owe it to our ancestors to know the stories and to tell them, and to not hide in the shadows anymore like we've been forced to do in the past.
Thank you, Christine. Jason, how about you?
Definitely, I would say yes, because there's so much you can learn, and I think, you know, in terms of what Christine was saying about effort, I totally agree to kind of go in with as much as you can. But if that doesn't happen, I think I'm somewhere in the middle. To be honest, there's still a lot of value in stepping into the work, and I think all of us who participated, left the work at different places and got different levels of understanding or appreciation for our families, our ancestors, our stories, and not everyone is having the same experience. We had way different experiences. I think that's okay as well to say, you know what, I can only meet this work where I am at this point. And I think the facilitators and Diane all understand that when we're, you know, it's like when you know more, you do more. As you know, Maya would say, like we got to different points, and that's okay to say, you know what, I'm taking this far, and for me to have that door open between myself and my parents is a major thing. But there's a whole bunch of other work that I feel like I still need to do, and I'm okay with that. To also be gentle with yourself and say, you know what, I can take this far, and that's okay. And to be honest with yourself and with everyone else in the process, to say, this is where I am, this is where I can take it, because it can take you really far, and we don't want to lose anyone in the deep end either.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the great things about this particular project is that it can serve you however sort of deep you want / need to go. Everyone can be served under that same umbrella. Thank you, Jason. Thalia, what about you?
I would say you know, you have to be open to being vulnerable, because if you're not open to it, you won't be able to do it. And I don't think it's a process that everyone can do in the moment, because vulnerability is very hard, and sometimes it's just not the right moment. But if it was the right moment for them and they wanted to do it, I'd tell them to be open-minded, because it's something that's so different from our everyday life, that you need to step from a place of, you know, that lacks judgment, where you don't judge what's happening and you witness. I think that's really important. Another thing is patience. I think patience is really important, because it's so abstract that if you expect something from it, it's just going to be frustrating, because you don't know what's going to happen. So you just need to hold what comes to you and be like, okay, this is what it is, and just let it sit there instead of try to shape it into what you want it to be. I think that's really important. And the third thing would be immerse yourself in self-care. I think that one's really important, because again, since it's so vulnerable, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because history and your history is necessarily what you want it to be. And it's very hard to come with that reality and see it as the actual reality of how things are. So immerse yourself in self-care. I think those are the three things I'd say.
Thank you. That was great and really helpful and inspirational. And thank you, all of you, Thalia, Christine, and Jason, for coming in this morning to have a bit of a chat with us. And we will see you at the end of this thing. Thank you.
Bye.
That was really insightful. I love to hear from participants, because you know what Thalia said about it at the end there, about it can be quite abstract, and having to kind of be patient and hold it is so true. So I really love to hear from people who have participated in the program. like myself. And coming up next are going to be a few people who not only participated in the program, but have facilitated and were facilitators in this year's, and some of them have done it before. So let's welcome on screen Julie Tamiko Manning and Lopa Sirkar. I think we're also going to be joined by Benita Bailey, maybe. We will see if she pops up. Great. Okay, so Julie and Lopa, let's just start with you guys giving us a little introduction about yourselves. Just tell us who you are, where you're from. Yeah, let's start there. Julie?
Sure. I am a theater artist here in Jojage, Montreal, and I've been working in the theater since, I don't know, 1991. I was going to say 2001, but I was like, that's wrong. That's wrong.
No.
Yeah, so my training is in performance, and then in the last 10 years I've started to do more creation and writing, playwriting.
Thank you. Lopa, yourself?
I am in the Netherlands. I'm Canadian, born in Canada, but in the Netherlands now. And I was an actor for a long, long time. And then about 12 years ago, I went to grad schools to become a voice coach, voice teacher. So that is what my main work is now. And I'm also a rolfer, which is a kind of manual work here, manual therapy. And so those are the things that I do. And yeah, this process transformed all of those three things. Still.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's, I do definitely want to hear about that. Let's see if Benita is ready to introduce herself. Hey, Benita, how's it going?
Hi, Benita.
Can you hear us?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
The gods of technology.
Listen. Okay, you're here. You look amazing. So I say, and we're just doing intros, and you literally popped up when it was your time. So I think that this all came together. It's fine. So if you just could give us a bit of an intro about yourself, Benita, and tell us where you are.
Thank you, Warona. Hi, Julie. Hi, Lopa. Hi, everyone out here. I'm Benita Bailey. I'm a storyteller. I'm an actor, theater creator, and filmmaker. I'm currently in Toronto. The sun is shining here and the sky is blue. That's the answer to the first question.
That is the answer. You got it correct. Brilliant. Okay, so I know all of you have been through the arrivals process at some point. So my next question is, when did you go through it last? And then why did you decide to become a facilitator? Julie, why don't you start us off?
I did it in 2009. Diane was talking about it before with you, and I actually wrote down all of these are the people who did it: Mike Payette, Glenda Braganza, Sophie G, Tristan D. Lala, Tamara Brown, Warona, Liliana Cormine, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, Chimamwe Miller, and Naima Phillips, and then the co-facilitators were Heather Hermant and Danielle Smith. And doing that in 2009, it was such an incredible moment, because I remember that was the first time that Diane had introduced the idea of this being a village. I mean, maybe it wasn't the first time for her, but and I remember how profoundly that affected me, because we sat in a circle and we talked. And it was the first time that I was in a room of people who, when I talked about stuff, everybody just nodded their heads. I don't know if you remember that, Warona. And we were all just like, and we all talked about how everyone is just nodding their heads, and how we can start from a place, sort of we don't have to start from a minus place. We can start from a place where we all kind of understand the experience. Although we didn't have a similar experience, we had a common experience, if that makes sense. Anyway, so I did that in 2009. And then very recently, I was working with Diane on Benita's project, which was a digital version. Actually, I did it maybe about 4 years ago as a co-facilitator, but then I couldn't finish it because I got really sick. I think my ancestors were going like, get out, do some self-care. But then, and then with Benita in digital form, which has been really, really much more incredible than I thought it would be, because I thought it would be super difficult in this form. And that is, I didn't decide to be a facilitator. Diane decided for me to be a facilitator, which I am actually incredibly grateful for, because it is it's expanding on this work, the notion of witnessing, and the incredible importance and depth of holding a space for people who are doing the work. Yes, so very recently.
Thank
and it's
you.
Diane's fault.
How about you, Benita? When did you do the process yourself, and what made you decide to become a facilitator?
I did the process.
Oh,
We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There. Perfect. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I did the project in 2018, January, and that was my first time. And as Julie mentioned, again now in a digital version. And so the first time, that was the time that Julie was just talking about, where she couldn't finish it, and Julie was actually obviously next to Diane, very vital in me doing this work, because I heard about Diane and the Arrivals project while I was doing an artist mentorship program with BTW, and Warona was the project leader. And I have to admit that I thought I wasn't ready, So I'm saying that because sometimes you can feel like you're not ready, and then people who are like your mentors, like Julie Tamikomaning, think you're ready. And I was ready, but I didn't know it. So that's why this is important, I think. And this is how it started. And I'm so grateful to you, Julie, to you, Warona, and to Diane, because without that, I would have not been on this road. And it never left me, so that I wanted to go and use what I've learned for my own artistic practices and work. And that's how we, or I came up with Diaspora Kids project. And because of the pandemic, we had to do it online. So that was not by choice, if you so want. And yeah, it's been an incredible process. And similar to what Julie said, is like, I did not choose to be a facilitator, because I wouldn't even think that I was ready, because I've been on the other side. Because even in Diaspora Kids, I'm still researching my ancestors, and it feels like I just started, I don't have the feeling like I've been doing this work like for like all of you. You've been in it for a decade. I feel like a baby. And so it's been so amazing, and I'm so incredibly thankful that I can be on this side, because I'm learning so much about witnessing, and I feel like there's a vital role of witnessing that is missing in our society. So I'm really researching deeper about the role of witnesses and listening and really taking in stories. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Benita. Thank you. Lopa, of course, the same question for you.
I am trying to get the dates right. I met Diane at the Voice Intensive, which is, I think many folks in Canada will be familiar with that. It's 5 weeks of intense work on your voice. It's beautiful. Many aspects of it are an incredible program. And I met Diane there. We were both participants. And I, at that point, it snuck up on me during that intensive that I wanted to research. I wanted to write. I never wanted to write. I only wanted to act, but I wanted to write about my grandfather. It just came. And then I was having a conversation with Diane, and she was like, well, I'm working on something that might help you with that. And it couldn't have been a more beautiful intersection. So I really mean what I say, like when I said at the beginning, since 2005, so for a really long time, this work has informed my artistic practice as an actor, as well as a voice coach. That form of witnessing that is required in this work is different. It has a different flavor. It has a different depth than anything that I learned in all my theater training and all the like it's a completely different level of compassion and empathy that is required and demanded in order for this work to go. That's what makes it so thick and so rich and so dynamic. And yeah, so that was in 2005. And I think I did various incarnations. So right at the beginning, when Diane was figuring it out, I was playing then there, you know, and then in 2009 or 8, I think, was when I began to write my piece for my grandfather. And then I co-facilitated with Lil, who's not here, Liliana, who's not here today, but I wish you were, with Diane in Nova Scotia, I think, some years later. But also, just like you, Julie, and just like you, Benita, Diane, I come co-facilitating because Diane asked me. And when someone like Diane asks you to do this kind of work, the only answer is yes. It doesn't matter what the hell is happening in your body. She asks you, you say yes.
You say yes, thank you for the opportunity.
You know, that's why. And I have to say also, even now, being here in Holland and co-facilitating with you, Julie, and with you, Benita, especially Benita and I, or a mini pair within the group of co-facilitators, I cannot tell you how much doing that work a month ago has helped me to be here in this new land that I've been here for 3 years. It's like I got in here now in a profound way because of witnessing the participants in this work. So the layers of giving and receiving that happens in this work, it's unparalleled. And I don't have that experience with I haven't had that experience in other realms of creation. That's
and just to expand on that, thank you, Lopa, so much. Just to expand on that and kind of try and float into my next question. You've spoken quite eloquently about what you've gotten in terms of your own practice and process with the witnessing. And I'd also like to hear from Julie and Benita on that. But before that, I would also just like to hear from you, Lopa, about how do you think that can be translated or transmitted to the sort of national scape? How do you think this can like affect our national way of making art and practice or adding or just sort of the larger scope of it, you know?
I think as a Canadian, I can speak to the Canadian landscape, but
yeah, for sure, the Canadian landscape.
The richness of story, I mean, the moments are so small and so huge at the same time. The richness of story that emerges because it's coming from such an authentic place within the creator. I think that kind of sourcing can create within the Canadian landscape not only I'm getting sick of that word, diversity, but not only a wider realm of stories, but a resilience in the story maker. You know, like, I don't buy that thing about the suffering artist. We have to be traumatized. Terrible things have to happen, and from that we create art. I don't think that that has to be true. And the artists that are, or non-artists, they are the people who do this work. I think Christine talked about, you know, oh, what's going to happen today? Maybe my heart will break. But in this work is the glue that glues your heart back together stronger. So your mental health as an artist, you gain that resilience from doing this work because there's something in it that gives your body peace. You know, it brings the past into the present in an alive way, and that guides the future. We can't keep making the mistakes of the past if it's here. We can keep making the mistakes of the past if it's way over there in a book somewhere. You know, and in a country like Canada, that richness, you know, it's transformative, and I think it creates this tremendous scope for healing and compassion and witnessing for even for participants. You know, even for like theater goers, for example, or playwrights or dancers, whatever art form you take, if you do, to take this work further. It demands a different kind of witnessing. You don't have to have a conversation about. You don't have to teach your audience, this is how you witness. You show them stories like this, and that innate ability for each of us to witness comes. So it has the possibility to change everything, I think. And it's essential training for people, if you're of color or not of color. We have to know. We have to know.
Yeah. Thank you, Lopa. Thank you. That was so brilliantly put. Julie, how about yourself? Maybe if you could start by telling us a bit more about how this has affected your personal practice, and then maybe how you can see it, you know, transforming national. And we are speaking about Canada. I forget that some of you are like across the world, but right now we're just talking about that. Julie.
Yeah, I always say that since doing this work, I've really discovered that my ancestors live in my spine, and finding that in myself as a performer, I think allowed me to shed all of the expectations that other people had on me. So I tell this story where I was also at the voice intensive, and this, there was a couple of things where I was working around legacy, and this was certainly part of it, as well as the voice intensive. Having gone through this, I was a little bit closer to that idea of my root culture. And I realized that my entire career up to that point, I was 35 at the time, I had been pretending to be a white person. So, you know, being trained to go into your neutral body, and I understood the neutral body was the white body. And so it was a very frustrating and very inauthentic process for me,
Right.
because it was only up until that point when I was 35, I went, oh my God, that's not my neutral body. This entire time I have been performing, trying to be somebody else's neutral body before even, you know, going deeper into the character. So at 30, I realized that this.
Oh,
No.
I think Julie. Oh no.
No, Julie.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Jules. She's frozen up. I'm just gonna try and give her a second or two because I really want to hear what she had to say. I mean, we'll come back to her regardless, but since we're live, I don't take up too much time. Okay, Benita, are you there?
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can totally hear you fine. Let's cross over to you, and hopefully, and then when Julie comes back, we'll pick her back up for sure. We do want to hear what she has to say. But let's talk to you for a little bit, Benita. Oh, wait, hold on. Wait, Julie, are you back? Can you hear us?
I'm here.
Yay.
Oh,
We
that
have
was
to have
stressful.
one little technical something. It's part of it. It's kind of like, blessing the process, and so it's what it is. It's fine. So, Julie, you were talking to us about your discovery of feeling like you were in this neutral body that was not a neutral body at all, and then at 35 years old and sort of coming out of that. So please keep going.
Yeah, so I was talking about how this work it works towards decolonizing our bodies,
Yeah.
because because, well, I'm talking about me. I was educated in a very Eurocentric theatrical practice because I went to school here, and so going through this process, are it's also a process of decolonizing our bodies. And then if you are a performer, I'm sure if you whatever, it's like you shed that lie of trying to fit into a mold. And so as soon as you find that authenticity within you, then that authenticity is going to come through on stage. If you're writing or whatever it is that you're doing. And so, as far as how it changes the landscape in Canada, I think that, if this became something that was part of the curriculum in the theater schools, I think that we would see an incredible change in our stories and on our stages. And because I think that it would just kind of, people would break through these molds. Everyone has a mold that they're trying to fit into, which is crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
yes.
No, that's
So,
quite brilliant. Thanks,
yay,
Julie. Thank you
Diane.
for that. Hey, man, Diane, we're just waiting on that institute. Roll on everything on out.
Man.
Benita, though, I also want to, of course, hear from you personally and again to the landscape.
Yes, I'm gonna just pick it up where Julie left off, because I was gonna talk about the neutral body as well, because we both come from theater, and also Diane's wrote really nicely in particular about that, having experienced that herself as well, and me too, being trained in Berlin in a Western institution and not realizing what's going on. And I feel like a lot of people of color are going through that process, have been and still are. And that is, to broaden it even, also the fact, not just for artists, but everyone who's educated under a westernized institution, which is quite frankly happening globally also, in, talking for me, African countries, or in Asia, or wherever we go. So this is a serious issue that actually concerns everyone, which I think needs to be underlined, because sometimes it's a little bit treated like it's an issue of marginalized people, or if it's an issue for, and no, it really concerns us all. So coming back to what change did it make for me, and it is similar to what Julie said, is as an artist, I'm constantly searching for my authentic artistic voice. And that is probably a lifelong journey, but this process has clearly brought me closer to it. And it gave me that confirmation that a belonging in this world is possible, where a long time in my life, I've lived in so many different places, and I feel like wherever I go, I don't really belong, because I either don't speak the language and I look like them, or I don't look like them, but I speak the language. It's like, it seems to not match, But through the connection to my ancestors, for the first time, I felt there's something truthful. And I think this work, what it brings to Canada and to everyone, artist or not, is that it brings truth that is not deniable because it's in our bodies, it's in our intuition, it's in our language, it's something that is internal. And I think what Canada and many other countries, but Canada particularly needs, is to recognize there's lots of truth that is untold. It's there. It's not like it's not there. It's just not been spoken or embodied, or there has been an intense erasure happening. And I think this process is helping that truth come to light, and truth can, however, in which form ever, through science, through and what is also important, it's not always comfortable truth, it's also uncomfortable truth. And I think this process allows to have both. It's not all like, what I love about it, I think Thalia highlighted on it, like, it's not all painful. I love that there's pain and then there's joy. Our ancestors, like Diane often stresses, they weren't suffering all the time. There were at least moments of joy. And to experience that and connect to joy or to connect to ceremony, those are things that I think need to be experienced. And so that is, I think, what the process can bring. And this deeper form of connection to our ancestors, I think, will also help to change the narrative in such a way that I feel like, particularly Quebec, that's my experience living there for a few years. I'm now in Toronto, but I lived in Montreal, is that there is a denial of richness, that diversity, and let's go away from diversity, but let's say different truths that are existing has been seen as something negative, but it's like something beautiful. Even uncomfortable truths are beautiful, and I think it needs to be celebrated. And I mean, there's such a huge group of Haitians that are still having to fight to be heard, but there's so much more than Haitians. There's so many more people from all over the world. And that is beautiful. All these languages, next to French and English, there's so many more languages. And I think there needs to be a shift happening for all of that to be celebrated and get more space instead of being pushed aside. And I hope that through processes like that, that's made possible, and there's more room for more narratives for everyone to be to have access.
Wow. Okay. That. Thank you so much, Benita. That was really well put. I am gathering so much talk about authenticity and truths and even uncomfortable truths. And I think it's really important, and also learning, our institutions, part of this arrivals process, like Diane describes, was came out of her experience at an institution. We have all experienced that in some way, shape, or form, and know how important it is for us to have not just representation of ourselves in those institutions, but representation of our practices, our ceremony, the things from whence we come within everything. So thank you. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up right now. And thank you so much, Julie, Benita, and Lopa, and Liliana was also one of our facilitators who couldn't be here today, Liliana Parmine, so we'll just give her some special love. And at this moment, I'd just love to call everybody back on the screen so that we can do goodbye, and also and if you have your tea or your whatever you have, your little drinky poo, just lift her up right now. If you don't, you can just lift an arm or a hand or anything. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I'd also like to take this opportunity to just introduce Lydie Dubuisson over there sipping her tea, who has been integral in putting all of this together and is a huge part of the installation that'll be coming up. So I just wanted everybody to, that's who I don't know where she is on the screen, but for me, she's right down there.
I just like to say also thank you to the Secretaria Relations because all of this is possible thanks to thank you to Black Community Resource Center for mandating this wonderful project. Thank you for thinking of the Black Workshop to do all of this and Black People Workshop just amazing process as how to explore belonging in Quebec, because I think that exactly this conversation today is on point. That's why we have this process. I love everybody so much.
Wow, you sounded really interesting, Liddy, and I was like, let's do it. It sounded like a piece of poetry you put together just now. There was a sound effect on it. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but thank you. Yes, thank you to all of the different sponsors.
It sounded like the ancestors talking just from the world. Like,
you know it was. You know it was, which is why I was like, let them speak, okay? So we're just going to take this last moment to say goodbye. And as we do, we'll do the cheers, the proverbial pour of libation on the ground for our ancestors. You can pour it outside later, and a little sip. Thank you so much. Thank you, Diane Roberts, for bringing us all together, and to all of you for joining us here on this Sunday morning, which is now afternoon. So have a great rest of your day. Arrivals and belonging. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you, Warona.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.